Hello everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back. I hope that you are all well, and if you are new, thanks so much for checking out my channel. Please hit subscribe and stick around. As we are getting near the end of the year, we have a few weeks left, I have been thinking about and working on what my reading goals and channel plans will be for 2023. So I will be sharing more about all of that next week. But today I wanted to introduce one of my reading projects, and I know that there are already a million different readathons and challenges out there, but I just thought that I would add something a little different, and I'd like to invite you to participate as little or as much as you would like. And I'm calling this reading challenge Reading Across Canada 2023. It's probably no surprise to any of you who have been watching my channel, but I read a lot of Canadian literature, and I try as much as I can to highlight Canadian authors and their books on my channel. So I thought this year I would take that idea and do something a little bit different, hopefully something fun, and I am going to attempt to read different authors from across Canada. And I'm inviting you along for the adventure. So there are 12 prompts, each attached to a different Canadian province or territory. And I'm going to start with the most important thing about this whole challenge. And the most important thing is that there are no Reading Across Canada 2023 police. So that means you can do this challenge however you want. Perhaps you are new to CanLit and you already have other challenges, so the challenge for you is to read one Canadian author this year. That's awesome. I'd be interested to find out, who you choose to read. I'd also be happy to offer recommendations if that's something that you might need. So, or the other option is that maybe for you, you're all in and you want to do all of it. There can't be enough Canadian literature for you, and you're thinking, Jolene, please make this more challenging. And that's not a problem either, so don't worry. I have something for you too. So this challenge can be whatever you want it to be, and you can interpret the prompts whichever way you want. I have created a poster to help us along, and I will go through it with you, giving you different options on how to do the challenge. So this is the poster, and I will leave a link to this in the description box below so that you can download it or print it out or use it so that it works best for you. So at the top of the poster here, there's an area where you can keep track of the books that you read throughout the year. There is a spot for each province or territory. And then below that are the provinces and prompts for each month. So starting January. So if you want the challenge to be a little bit easier, then you can ignore the prompts and just read a book set in that province or territory, a book by an author born in that province or territory, or an author that lives in that province or territory, however you choose to do that. So that will definitely, if you choose to do it that way, it'll broaden the search for reading options. If you want the challenge to be a little bit more challenging, then you can follow the province or territory and then the prompt that you see here for each month. So I will go through all of these prompts with you, and then at the end of this video, I will give you some recommendations for January, which is British Columbia, and then I'll do every month. I will let you know what I read, and then I will give recommendations for the following month, so you'll always be a month ahead. So let's take a look at these. January is British Columbia. We simply say BC, and we can see fireworks and stars reminding us of the new year, and we see trees and mountains, plus lots of snow. BC is known for its natural beauty. The mountains, the trees, the ocean, and the wildlife. The provincial slogan is Beautiful British Columbia. it's on their license plates. So for BC, the January prompt is to read a book about nature. What makes the prompt more challenging is that the prompt is still connected to the province. So you need to find a book that is either set in BC, written by an author born in BC or living in BC, and it has to be about nature in this case. So that does narrow the choices down quite a bit. But again, no worries, I will have some suggestions for you at the end of this video. In February, we travel to Alberta. Alberta also has mountains. It's still cold and snowy in February, so you can see the winter hats there. Canadians call those winter hats toques. Alberta is known for oil, beef, and tourism, especially skiing in Banff and Lake Louise. February is also the month of love. We have Valentine's Day in February. So February's prompt is to read a book on a topic you are passionate about. Moving on to March, and for the purposes of this challenge, we are going to pretend that the snow will be gone. So in March, as we know, some places in Canada will continue to get snow until May. There, I said it. Okay, but for our purposes, we are going to focus on the places in Canada that begin to see signs of spring in March. So we are also going deeper into the prairies as we visit Saskatchewan, the most difficult province to spell, but the easiest province to draw. Saskatchewan is sometimes, I would say it's an overlooked or underappreciated province, and yet it is the land of beautiful wheat fields. The people are hardworking and they live a unique lifestyle. So the prompt for Saskatchewan is to read a memoir, autobiography, or biography. Going into April, more Canadians are starting to enjoy that spring we talked about and the warmer weather, and we crossed the border from Saskatchewan into Manitoba. This is the last of the prairie provinces and the province that's famous for the polar bears. April is also National Poetry Month in Canada. So Canada has many talented poets. So for this month, the prompt is to read a collection of poetry. So now it's May, when Canadians enjoy the new life of trees and flowers and animals, and Ontario is our next province. We are now in central Canada, and this is the province that is home to the capital of our country, Ottawa. And Ontario has many popular and famous cities like Toronto, and of course the honeymoon capital of the world, Niagara Falls. And May is Short Story Month in Canada, and short stories are a really important part of Canadian literature. So the prompt this month in May is to read a short story collection. Now we are coming up to halfway through the year as we enter June, and we visit Quebec, the largest province geographically in Canada. And English and French are Canada's national languages, but it's, I would say, mostly Quebec, which is known for its French culture. If you actually visit the old part of Quebec City, you will feel like you are walking the cobblestones of Paris. So for June, the prompt is to read a book by a French Canadian. We enter into our first maritime province as we check out New Brunswick in July. We are now into summer, when families are enjoying the outdoors, the sunshine, and just being together. New Brunswick is a great spot if you want to see lighthouses. It also has some French communities, and it's known for its natural and unique beauty. I would say that the Bay of Fundy is a must-see, and the prompt for July is to read a book about family life. Heading into Nova Scotia and the summer month of August, we have now traveled from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean. Nova Scotia is famous for its lobster and seafood. One of Canada's most famous summer destinations is Halifax and Peggy's Cove. And the prompt for August is to read a book set in summer, or on vacation. Summer comes to an end, autumn can be seen in the distance, and in September school is beginning and we turn to the smallest Canadian province and the last of the maritime provinces. We cross the famous Confederation Bridge to arrive in Prince Edward Island, which we just call PEI. This little province is famous all over the world, especially Japan, and it's all because of literature. Lucy Maud Montgomery wrote the Anne of Green Gables series, and Anne continues to capture the hearts of many people worldwide. So for September, the prompt is to read a book by Lucy Maud Montgomery. As October gushes along with the crisp air and Canadians prepare to celebrate Thanksgiving, we do celebrate in October, we find ourselves on the Rock. Newfoundland and Labrador is the last of the Atlantic provinces. And yes, it is just one province, and it is known for its stark beauty, the friendliest people, and lending a hand to many in times of crisis, including taking people in during 9/11, and more than doubling the population of the town of Gander. So for October, the prompt is to read a book by an author born in Newfoundland and Labrador. We are now leaving the provinces and heading to Canada's north to visit the territories. It's November, and we are heading to the Yukon, which is known for its wildlife, the gold rush, and cold, cold weather. Just as November leaves behind autumn and welcomes in the colder weather, many of the stories of the North have an element of winter. So November's prompt is to read a book with a winter vibe. We are now going into the last month of the year. It's incredibly cold, especially in the north, and we are visiting the last two territories, the Northwest Territories and Nunavut. The land of the midnight sun, and in the winter, darkness. When I think of Canada's north, I think of the land and I think of the people. The land is vast and desolate, and it takes a certain kind of folk to live in these areas. It's not for everyone, and when I think of the land that we call Canada now, I think of its First Peoples. The Indigenous peoples living in Canada have strong spirits. Their history, like the northern weather, has been difficult, harsh, and relentless. This history, the history of colonization and residential schools, is all of our history, and we must all work towards reconciliation. The truth is slowly being unearthed, and people are finding their way forward. The final prompt for the year is to read a book by an Indigenous author. So that is a look at what is to come, and as promised, I am going to offer some recommendations. So if you choose to participate, don't worry, you are not alone. We are going to explore this great country together. So my first recommendations will be for anyone who kind of just wants to focus on the province of BC. So for books set in BC that I have read, I'm going to recommend two books that I did a book pairing video on. One was fiction, the other nonfiction. Chevy Stevens is the author of Dark Roads, and this is a fictional story about women who go missing from a specific highway and are often found dead. And then the nonfiction book is Highway of Tears by Jessica McDermott, and this is the real story about Highway 16 in northern British Columbia, where many Indigenous women have gone missing, and many of them have been found murdered. So a book that I highly recommend for an author that lives in BC is Michelle Good, the author of Five Little Indians, which follows 5 people after they leave residential school. And this takes place in Vancouver. And this was actually the 2022 winner of Canada Reads. For an author that is born in BC, actually Chevy Stevens was born on Vancouver Island. So besides Dark Roads, any of her books would fit. And I've only read one other one, and this book is still missing. It's Not Missing, that's the title of the book, about a woman who is kidnapped and held for a long time. It was a brutal and emotional read. If you are okay with character-driven novels, then I would recommend Astra by Cedar Bowers. Cedar Bowers was born on Galliano Island and I believe still lives there. And Astra is about learning about a woman through the perspectives of those around her and those she's closest to. So if you want to follow the prompt, a book about nature, then I have a few options here. I'm just going to move these. I'm going to start with fiction books. And since we were just talking about Cedar Bowers, I think I'm going to recommend her husband's book. Michael Christie is the author of Greenwood. This is one of the books on my radar for this prompt because it's been on my shelf for way too long. It's been some time. It's also beautiful. I love that. Looks like a tree. So this is a story about several generations of the Greenwood family from the 1930s to the 2030s and their connection to trees. The concept and structure of this book have always intrigued me, so I really do want to see what it's all about. And then another fiction novel that's been on my radar for some time is Forest Green, and this is by Kate Pullinger, who was born in Cranbrook, BC. And the story is set in the Okanagan Valley and in Vancouver. And I am suggesting this one so you can see what I mean by using the prompts however you like. So the title is Forest Green, which is a color, but it is also nature. So the story itself is an examination of Arthur Lund's life and how a tragic event has affected his entire life. So you could also say that this is about human nature. My next suggestions are all nonfiction, beginning with Suzanne Simard, who is a professor of forest ecology at UBC. She was a defender this year for one of the Canada Reads books, and she's the author of Finding the Mother Tree. This takes a look at the life of trees and how they communicate with each other and with us. And sticking with this theme is a book that I read many years ago now called Tree, A Life Story by David Suzuki. This follows the entire life cycle of a tree in a forest, and I remember finding it fascinating. And really anything by David Suzuki I think would make sense. He lives in BC. He's one of Canada's, I would say, maybe even the world's leading scientists. He's been the host of The Nature of Things for at least 1,000 years. So nature is just part of everything he is and that he's about. In fact, I think I might even have his autobiography on my shelf, so I will have to look for that too. Next up is a book that I talked about just recently in one of my last videos, and that is Chasing Rivers, A Whitewater Life by Tamar Gluberman. This is a story about Tamar's experience as a guide, whitewater rafting in many different places, including northern BC. And then the last book that I want to talk about, I haven't actually received it yet. It is on its way from the publishers, but I wanted to mention it because if I get it before January, this might be one of the books that I read for this prompt. It would probably lean more to the human nature side of things, I think. The book is called Bloom Where You Are Planted, and this is by Becca Shane Denter. So bloom and planted in the title are also nature words, so it could work for that. But this book celebrates 50 different people, 49 women and one non-binary person who have found success in their various fields. So they range from people in the world of the arts, dance, photography, food, fashion, music, design, comedy, and advocacy. So my understanding is that they are all from BC and have a story to tell. So I'm really looking forward to checking this out, and hopefully it will arrive soon. Okay everyone, so this is the kickoff to my new challenge for next year. I will share more of my reading and channel plans and all of that stuff next week. For now, if you want to join me in Reading Across Canada 2023, please let me know. I would, love for you to join in. And as I said, it's pretty easy. It can be whatever level is comfortable for you. And I will leave a link to the poster, and I will list all of the books that I mentioned in the description box below. Please let me know if you plan on reading along. I would love to know what books you are considering for January. What are your British Columbia books about nature? And do you have any recommendations that you would add to the list? I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.